Now, there was yet more Champions League Geordie joy last night as Newcastle United continued an impressive home form this season. Uh, excuse me. A comfortable 2-0 victory and a great goal from Byrne over Athletic Club.
Floats it now towards the far post. Byrne arrives with a header. Oh, what a header! Dan Byrne, 12 yards out of the far post, and he arrows it in. It curls right inside the top corner.
Well, not many could do this with their feet, let alone their head. But it is big Dan Byrne that peeled to the back post.
It'll fall here to the far post. Shot! A hammer shot hits the post, bounces to safety. That was Adama Boiro, the fullback, who's unleashed an absolute exocet from the edge of the box. Goes back to Newcastle, back to Barnes, onto his left foot, stands on the cross. Joe Linton heads it in from close range. Dream start to the second half for the Toon.
He couldn't miss. It was such a good ball in from Barnes. But Joe Linton, all he had to do was plant the header, passes him on for 2-0.
But that's it. The whistle goes and a big cheer goes round. It is a third successive Champions League win for Newcastle United.
Yeah, that was some header, wasn't it?
Brilliant
It was an
header.
absolute cracker. Basically heading it back to where it's come from. Beauty. What a header to open the scoring when the ball was whipped in. Byrne managed to curl his head in. Well, curl or just power it in, punch it in the far corner. Joe Linton made it 2 just after half-time to put the Magpies in the top 8 of the league phase. John is now a man who knows Newcastle better than anyone. Daily Mail chief football reporter Craig Hope joins us now. Craig, a very good morning.
Morning, Craig.
Morning to you both, guys.
Craig, that was a bit special, wasn't it? The big fella, local boy, bosh, get in there, 1-0.
It was a fantastic goal, and I was pleased for him because he spoke to us on the eve of the game. And while it was meant to be looking forward to the big Champions League night, the visit of Athletic Bilbao, we spent the entirety of our time with Eddie Howe and with Dan Byrne looking back over Sunday's defeat down at West Ham. So, which I think was right. You know, they both admitted their subsequent analysis of that was very painful. They were looking for a response last night, and they got it to a point. Now, what I would say is you guys from afar might look on and see Newcastle 2, Athletic Bilbao nailing a club with all the history and tradition and from La Liga and think that's a wonderful result. It is a good result, but what did it tell us about the response to West Ham, and what did it tell us about Newcastle going into Brentford on Saturday? Well, not a great deal, if I'm honest, because it was what it was and they did what they had to do, but it wasn't a massively impressive performance. And honestly, guys, I think this comes back to now, and this is a wider subject to explore. Premier League teams are just better. They're just stronger. We're seeing this especially going into second halves of games. It wasn't really a contest. During the first half hour, Newcastle were a little bit sticky. Bilbao hit the post. And as I said earlier, I didn't think Newcastle did massively function in attack. But you look at Newcastle beating Bilbao. They beat Benfica last time out. I think the scores 2 weeks ago for Premier League teams, an aggregate of 18-2.
Yeah.
Last night it was 16-3. Premier League teams are good. Newcastle will have a harder game at Brentford than they will against Bilbao. So while it was a good night, a big night, they did what they had to do, I wouldn't read loads into it.
Yeah, do you know, when I look at Ray, and I think of Ray's Arsenal, Craig, you know, they've got 2 players for every position now, and that worries me when Newcastle, Europe, Premier League, Europe, Premier League. You know, is their squad in depth? Is it big enough? Is it strong enough? Is it good enough?
Yeah, I think it is. And what we'll probably see in the Champions League this season, Alan, is that I think Newcastle's Champions League campaign, when we come to reflect on it all at the end of the year, might even have been better in relative terms than the Premier League campaign, because they have got depth. Yeah, for the first time this season, there is a little bit of competition. You're looking at the players they're bringing off the bench. Eddie Howe laughed last week against Tottenham in the Carabao Cup. For the first time in his career, he brought on 2 England internationals and 2 Brazil internationals in the space of 10 minutes. He's never done that before. So I think the depth is there. And what you've also got is, in St James's Park and Newcastle United have shown this, they do rise to the big occasion. It's why in 4 seasons they've only lost 1 Carabao Cup game over 90 minutes. They've got to 2 finals in that time. I think this year in the Champions League they might just reserve the best for that. It will bring everybody together on those big nights under the lights. And last night did feel like that, coupled with the fact, the point I've just made, Premier League teams are bigger, better, fitter, faster, stronger. The Premier League is so strong now, and it's no surprise to see, as you know, right now, those 6 Premier League teams going through. I'd go one further, guys. You could put any Premier League team of the 20, including the promoted sides, into the Champions League, and I think they would go through as one of the top 24.
Wow. Okay, but talk to me about Anthony Gordon, Craig. And he's not banging form. I really like him as a player. I think he's been brilliant since he signed for Newcastle. But he limped off last night again, didn't he?
Ray, you sound like my London desk at the Daily Mail. They asked me that exact question on Monday morning.
Oh, did they?
What's up with Anthony Gordon? So I ended up writing in yesterday's Daily Mail a big, long feature, and it went in the bat for Gordon a little bit, because while there is the headline figure of no goals or assists in 19 Premier League matches, that might suggest that he is horribly out of form. He's not really. He had a fantastic game against Benfica a couple of weeks ago. Likewise, against Latvia for England, man of the match. Now, does that speak to the point I've just made about Champions League teams and international football not being as strong? Perhaps it does, but I don't necessarily think Gordon is in a bad place. He just needs to find a way to map that to the Premier League. Now, last night, he went out and didn't play well. He went off injured before half-time. Eddie Howe says it's a recurrence of a hip complaint, so there might be mitigation there. But certainly for a player of his talent, if the World Cup was to start tomorrow, he would be in Thomas Tuchel's side on the left. Is he shown that week on week in the Premier League? No, he's not. That's over to him. That's the challenge.
Craig, we're just toying with the idea. England, the riches they have, it's all about Tuchel getting the right combinations here. What, can we look into your head and say what sort of midfield should England play? Look, Harry up front, someone alongside Harry. Who would that be? And then give me your midfield.
I'll tell you what I didn't like, guys. When I was waiting to come on there, I was listening to you talk, and all the time in the world for you, Ray. But when you suggested that Phil Foden's got to come back in, Jude Bellingham's got to come back in, Saka, Palmer. I said this to Gabby Agbonlahor last month. Why? That's like going back to 2006. That's like going back to the Euros of 2004 when Gareth created that problem. Thomas Tuchel has looked at it and thought, no, I'm going to create a team here. If that means Morgan Rogers in the 10 or Elliot Anderson in the 6 players who might not be as heralded as the others, no, I'm going to build togetherness. I'm going to build momentum. And that's what he's done so far. The wonderful players, we're not denying that. I think Bellingham will be back in tomorrow. And out of all of those, Bellingham's the one I would put in and say to him, you've had this little shock. You've been left out. I've publicly taken 1, 2, 3, 4 swipes at you. What have you learned from that? Come back in. Be a good teammate. I would do it with Bellingham, but not necessarily with Foden or Palmer's or other. I think those in possession of the jersey right now deserve to stay there.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's the problem we have, is opinions, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll see Craig when they play better sides. We'll see if he changes his mind, but he looks strong in his mind, doesn't he?
Oh, he's
Tuchel, but
he's not scared to leave the big players out.
No,
definitely not, and which is a good sign, because everybody's got to really earn their position now. You're not guaranteed.
And he's got to earn his money now, because he's got some great players to pick from.
Yeah.